What is going on, everyone? It is the boys here from across the plane. My name is Will. You can find me at MPLS_outdoors on Instagram. Uh, we cover fantasy football here at Across the Plane and also all sports. So make sure to give us a follow on Instagram, Twitter, subscribe to us on YouTube. All that is below, as well as our podcast on Spotify. Above me is.
I'm Jake the Rookie, and that's THA, like the main page, across the plane. And you can find us on Twitter and YouTube. Give us a follow. We talk fantasy football, and that's our thing here on YouTube.
Absolutely. So make sure to subscribe. We go live once or twice a week. Hit the bell for that. And as always, give us a comment if you have any questions about your fantasy football team. Was an interesting week 8. A lot of low-scoring games, some high-scoring games. Hope you guys got a win. Hope you guys had Dalvin Cook in your lineup. Obviously, he had the big scoring week. That was just massive. DK Metcalf had a huge week. Those Seattle receivers are just unstoppable there. We got some buys heading into week 9. We got Bengals, Browns, Eagles, and Rams. Plenty of fantasy-relevant players all around, so make the necessary adjustments. And it was another tough week for injuries.
Yeah, we had some guys going down. Kenny Galladay went down early without scoring any points and looks to be listed as doubtful for week 9. So if you started him last week, it probably wasn't a good week for you. I'm sorry about that. And you need to make adjustments now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it looks like it was a hip injury, obviously. He's listed week to week currently. Looks definitely not going to play next week. He's a candidate for short-term IR, so we will make adjustments for that when we get to the waiver wires, but that is tough if you're a Kenny Galladay owner. He's been pretty consistent, getting you double digits every single week. Another really tough injury is George Kittle. Looks like he might miss the rest of the season. He broke his foot, and they're saying he could be out up to 8 weeks, and I think at this point they're just going to shut him down for the rest of the season.
Yeah, why not? I don't think they're going to make any ground in that division.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I don't think they're making any ground. That is a really, really tough injury. And yeah, I think I don't think he plays the rest of the season. Obviously, you drafted him pretty high. Calvin Ridley played Thursday. He went out with the ankle injury. He's got the questionable designation. It does look like he might suit up, but do keep note of that. We will keep an eye on that going through the week. Obviously, this is being recorded Tuesday morning, so we only have so much info. He has that mid-foot sprain, so looks like he's day-to-day in practice. Keep an eye on that. Jimmy Garoppolo, player that some people I know might have streamed last week against Seattle, did not perform well, and then now has a high ankle sprain. Not looking good over there for the 49ers.
No, that's his second ankle sprain of the year, so I don't know how long he's going to miss, but I wouldn't expect to start him again, even especially with how he's performing. He's only had one good week. Yeah. Without an injury, and so I don't think he's that fantasy relevant.
Yeah, we will see how it affects the pass catchers going forward.
Exactly.
Whatever's left. I mean, Brandon Ayuk had a nice game. We told you guys to go out and start him.
I don't know. I think Nick Mullins ended up with more points than Jimmy G did
absolutely.
last week.
Nick Mullins is one of those quarterbacks where he always seems to do better when he doesn't start and comes in. But we'll see how he does going into next against Green Bay. And then lastly was Jonathan Taylor. A lot of guys were kind of high on him going into the week, and he put up a stinker. He looks like he's dealing with a little bit of an ankle injury. We'll just monitor that going forward. He's got a questionable designation.
Yeah, I'm hoping that was the reason for the 2 yards of carry. But, yeah, it was not looking good for him. He did not get volume like we expected, and like a lot of your favorite, more famous fantasy analysts predicted.
Yeah. And again, it's still, I think it looks like he might be able to play next week. It's still going to be tough to rank that backfield going forward.
Yeah, agree. Like they're really good at moving the ball. It's just a very good game managing team. It's but I don't know who's gonna get the fantasy points. They're putting up points.
Yeah, I mean,
Looks like the defense and the kicker.
yeah, obviously, both Jordan Wilkins and Naheem Hines had good games last week, and then Trey Burton had a rushing touchdown in the red zone. So just really interesting over there for the Colts.
Yeah.
Definitely a situation to keep an eye on going forward, but I do think he still maintains some fantasy value going forward.
Yeah, he has great matchups.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into the waiver wires. Obviously, every week it looks like, next man up. First waiver priority, we're going to go with Damien Harris. He had a great game last week. Running back's been such a thin position, but Damien Harris now has had 200-yard games this season. It's not looking good over there for the Patriots, only owning 26.2% of NFL leagues. I think he's a must-add if he's out there on your bench.
Yeah, I like him too. He had 100 yards last week. It just seems like as long as he doesn't fumble, he's going to continue to get volume. And I like him as an ad this week.
Yeah. 16 carries. Obviously, he's not a threat in the passing game, but they played the Jets this week, and they're a bottom defense against the run. And again, if he's getting double-digit carries at this point with the way the running back position is, that's super valuable. And he's playing the Jets, so I think he could be a very, very good play this week.
Absolutely.
All right.
Running back is thin.
Yep. And next up, we got Marvin Jones, owning 43.8% of NFL leagues. This obviously is directly related to the Kenny Galladay injury. Marvin Jones had 2 touchdowns last week. Didn't have a huge target share. Marvin Hall had more yards and more catches, but I do think Marvin Jones is the player to own. Next week, they go to Minnesota. Minnesota's been banged up. Their secondary's been banged up. And
yeah, great matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I expect Marvin Jones to come in and be a very nice plug and play for Kenny Galladay to be out.
Yeah, and if you played him last week, I think he had 2 touchdowns for you.
Yep. He had 2 touchdowns. He only caught 3 passes for 39 yards, but he did have 7 targets. And again, that was against the Colts. Much, much, much tougher defense. He did draw that number 1 coverage from Xavier Rhodes when Kenny Galladay went out. So expect good things from Marvin Jones this week against Minnesota.
Yeah, I like it.
All right. And another player who I am surprised his ownership is this low. Corey Davis is only owned in 32.8% of leagues. He's had some monster games last week. Last week he had 10 targets, 8 catches, 128 yards, and a touchdown. Week before against Pittsburgh, he had another 10 target games, 6 catches, and had a touchdown. Back-to-back games with double-digit targets. Looks like he can thrive. He thrives more as a WR2 with A.J. Brown drawing that top coverage over there. So Corey Davis, if he's out there, I think definitely can plug and play this week.
Yeah, I'm agree with everything you said. I got nothing really much more to add. I really like him.
Absolutely. All right, JaMycal Hasty. Now, again, this is directly related to injuries. Obviously, last week, Jeff Wilson was placed on IR. Tevin Coleman came back and then got injured again, and now he's doubtful for this week. So, looks like it's going to be JaMycal Hasty and Jerick McKinnon again. But I think JaMycal Hasty, he had a touchdown last week, and I think he has high touchdown upside again.
Yeah, Green Bay is the worst against the running back for fantasy. So even if he doesn't, I think, get a ridiculous amount of volume, I still think he's efficient with the work he gets, and it will be a safe play this week and a safe ad for sure.
He had 12 carries, but he had 4 red zone touches last week. And again, Green Bay has just been Swiss cheese on the defense against the run. So I think Jermichael Hasty, again, another player that you could put in at the flex and be pretty confident that.
I agree.
And next up, Zack Moss. Um, Buffalo is always going to be a tough position to figure out, but I do think that potentially Zack Moss could be the guy to own going forward.
Red zone work seems like it's going his way. So, for what it's worth, yes.
Yeah, I mean, he had 14 touches last week against New England, and they play in Buffalo. I do think. I mean, that division. They're going to be playing outside a lot going down the stretch. It's going to be a lot of inclement weather, and they'll be running the ball a lot. I think a lot more than they did in the first half of the season.
Yeah. He looked good against New England. Definitely a player to add, and maybe think about playing if you have somebody on the bye.
All right, and lastly, Mike Williams. I know receivers are really deep this year, but again, we're seeing injuries to that position every single week, and Justin Herbert is just slinging the ball, and he likes throwing the ball downfield. And Mike Williams is a great recipient of that. Obviously, it's been a little disappointing. I drafted Hunter Henry, been a little disappointing there, but Mike Williams is obviously boom or bust. But when he booms, it's big.
Yeah, I agree. Mike Williams, as he's only runs deep routes and gets thrown to in the end zone, so very high upside value, at least worth a bench spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're gonna play him again, he has favorable matchups next week. The next 3 weeks he plays against Las Vegas, then at Miami, then versus the Jets. So
Could be a bye week guy to plug in for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Definitely a player with huge upside as we know. And again, boom or bust, like we saw, 25 points a week 5. Then his next game he had 0.9 points, and then the next game he had 18 points. So boom or bust, but I think going forward we're going to see a little bit more boom than bust.
I agree. Herbert's airing it out, and Mike Williams runs the go.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next up, last player we're going to talk about is DJ Dallas, and this obviously is directly related to injuries. When we do our ranking show, we'll talk about some injuries going forward. These are just the injuries that happened week 9. We want to wait a little bit more to get some updates, obviously, later in the week. But if Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde aren't able to go, I think DJ Dallas is a great plug and play.
I don't know. What did he do last week? It didn't look like he had that efficient of a game. I understand he's going to get the volume, but he didn't look that efficient. So I'd maybe be cautious about playing him. What's the matchup next week?
Let's see. Next week, DJ Dallas plays Buffalo.
What did he do last week?
San Francisco is the number one rushing defense against the fantasy running backs. He had 18 carries for 41 yards and a touchdown. Had 5 catches for 17 yards and a touchdown.
Okay.
So, and again, this is directly related to injuries. If Chris Carson doesn't play, I think he has the higher upside than Carlos Hyde. And again, we could potentially see again Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde miss again. So it's directly related to injuries. Keep an eye on that going forward. Worth a deeper bench spot. But again, if both those running backs are out, I'm going to play DJ Dallas against Buffalo.
Okay.
At Buffalo. Yeah. All right. And next up, we're going to talk about some streamer plays. We always like to talk about a couple quarterbacks and a couple of defenses that you can stream. I think we've gotten some ones right. We've gotten some wrong. We got ahead on the Herbert train. We told you guys to go pick him up. Hopefully you guys all listened to that a couple weeks ago when we told you to. His ownership has now skyrocketed. We're going to talk about Drew Lock here, though. only owned in 2.2% of leagues. Um, and this is all about matchup.
Yeah, it's a great matchup. We saw him come back and win against the Chargers. That was a little fluky, if you ask me. Got a little help from the boys in black and white, but uh, you know what? He looks like he's capable of putting up 20 points against this terrible Atlanta defense.
Yeah, I mean, like we see, Atlanta is dead last, 32nd against the fantasy quarterback position. Drew Lock has now thrown the ball 40 times a game, 2 weeks in a row, and I think that's again a favorable matchup. It's at Atlanta. Sorry, I have versus Atlanta. It's at Atlanta. But again, they're playing in a dome. It's it's a great matchup. I think Drew Lock. If you got one of those
Yeah, and
guys on
if
buys, and if you're in a
the
deeper
DJ
league,
starts playing Young Jeezy, watch out.
yeah, watch out. So I think Drew Lock could be a good play. Next up, we had him last week, and you know we learned about the weather late. Obviously, there was some terrible weather, and they ran the ball a whole lot. Um, but this week, Derek Carr plays versus the Chargers, and I think this could potentially be a high-scoring game. Herbert likes to air it out. These teams both don't have great defenses, and they both have some nice deep ball threats. So I think we could see some touchdowns out of each of these quarterbacks in this matchup.
Yeah, we told you last week the weather did not help at all. But this week I'm feeling more confident in both Derek Carr and the weather. So look to stream him.
Yeah, Derek Carr can be another streamer. And this next quarterback, his ownership is just above 50%, but it's at 52%. That's going to be Ben Roethlisberger, 52.7% of NFL leagues. If he's out there, I think this could be a week you could play him. He's had a couple of down weeks in a row, and they could just, I mean, they could just destroy Dallas.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a lot higher on. I'm really high on James Conner this week. I think he's the one to start in this matchup. But Ben, I think, is decent stream. It's just very safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a safe play there versus Dallas. The only concern would be if, they get a defensive touchdown. Ben comes in, only gets one touchdown. They get it, and then they just start running the ball or something like that. But I think Ben Roethlisberger definitely is a really, really safe play and has some nice upside this week. And I don't know. I don't think we can always be too concerned about a really good team playing a really bad team. We had said the same thing about Mahomes last week, and then he threw five
Yeah.
touchdowns.
Yep.
So next up, we'll talk about some defenses here. Yeah, cut this out.
Defenses.
And we have the Houston Texans defense. Obviously, they've been terrible this week or this year, but I think there's some potential. Obviously, the news came out that Gardner Minshew is injured, and it looks like it's going to be Jake Luton, rookie quarterback Jake Luton. So I think if you need to stream a defense, Houston has some upside. I think they have a relatively safe floor. I think you could probably see a turnover and a couple sacks, and I think they have a safe floor this week.
They have a safe floor. They had their best week against Jacksonville earlier in the season, put up a whopping 9. And, I think it's a very safe
Yeah,
streaming option against a rookie quarterback that I've never seen play in the NFL. So that's why he's there. That's why they're there.
absolutely. Uh, Next up, we'll talk about the Washington football team.
That is a good streaming option. And future matchups looking ahead are solid too. So you can even keep them maybe 3 or 4 weeks looking ahead at their matchups.
Yep, definitely. And as we've known, Daniel Jones just you can always expect turnovers from him.
I agree. They're only owned in 14% of leagues. I expect that to go up to at least around 50% after this week, and we'll see. We'll see how Daniel Jones does against them, but I'm expecting a turnover
Yeah,
and some sacks.
absolutely. All right, and next up is we want to talk about the Miami Dolphins defense, only owned at 15.9%. And we're maybe not going to play them this week against Arizona. They're a great defense, maybe if you need to, but looking forward, their matchups are great. They play the Chargers, but then they play the Broncos, the Jets, the Bengals. Then they play the Chiefs, but then they play New England and Las Vegas. So they've got some really favorable matchups going down the stretch, and definitely a defense that I'd pick up if you have the bench spot.
I agree, and even if you don't, and are just gonna, you might just start them this week and take the potential not great game for those potential great games later on in the season.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So that's another reason why I was streaming.
And I do think they do have upside. I mean, they're a great defense. They have. I mean, they can always force a turnover. They're always going to be getting sacks. It's just Arizona obviously fifth best against fantasy defenses. So.
Yeah, and Brian Flores done a great job over there with that defense.
Yep. All right. And next up is a section that I like to get to. Is we like to get to 3 players that we want to trade for and 3 players that we want to trade away. And we'll talk about some players, a couple players that we think you should go out and trade for. And we're going to talk about Travis Fulgham. Now, Eagles are on a bye this week, and then after that, it looks like potentially Zach Ertz and Alshon Jeffries could come back. And I think that needs to be your trade leverage here. But I think Fulgham is a WR2 with WR1 upside going forward for the rest of the season for me.
Yeah. You could try to, whoever's got him, try to prime away saying, oh, Jeffrey's coming back, Ertz coming back, he's not going to be as good as he's been. But I think he is. Like, I really think that's Wentz and him have a good connection, and he's performing.
Yeah, absolutely. So they got the bye this week. His last 2 games, he's played over 95% of the offensive snaps, and I think that will continue. Obviously, I do think this week, though, is probably your last week that you can trade him. Going forward, he'll have the bye. And remember, he has a lot of value. Rest of the season, he's a very high-end WR2. And weeks 10, 11, and 12, he plays the Giants, Cleveland, and then Seattle. So all very favorable matchups. Look to Fulgham to be a nice addition to your team if you can go out and get him.
Agreed.
Because, again, he's probably a player that's somebody picked up off of waivers and had to bench a player they drafted to get him in their lineup.
Or he's just sitting on someone's bench.
Yeah, definitely a chance for that too, which you're crazy if he is. Next up, talk about Justin Jefferson. He had a little bit of a disappointing game, but, I'm not too worried about it. It was just Dalvin Cook. It was just a Dalvin Cook day. He had a record day. He had 4 touchdowns, over 200 yards. And Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson just put up a dud. Kirk Cousins' longest pass went 8 yards. So I'm not too worried about it. I think Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen pick it back up. And I think an owner might be a little low on Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, he's had some not high-performing games against defenses that you thought he was going to in Seattle and Green Bay. And it's looking like you could maybe get him for undervalue, because I think he still has potential of putting up some big games this year.
Yeah, I mean, upside is always through the roof. And again, I think that was more about game script last week than Justin Jefferson. They played Detroit, then at Chicago, then Dallas. A couple of favorable matchups in there in the weeks going forward. So go out. We talked about him a couple weeks before. Go out, trade Justin Jefferson. We're still very high on him rest of the season. I think the Vikings are going to do whatever they can to win as many games as they can rest of the season, and they're going to try to be competitive. So we'll see how that works out. But I think it will favor Justin Jefferson the rest of the season.
Yes, sir.
All right, and then we'll get to a couple of sell targets. And these are players that probably have some big names, and you just might be able to get. And they haven't been producing, or we think you just might be able to get more than what they're going to produce for the rest of the season. So, and that first player we're going to talk about is Chris Godwin. It's tough for me. It looks like he's 50-50 next week. He obviously had the surgery on the broken finger. He has been Tom Brady's favorite target when healthy, but Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, Scotty Miller, Gronkowski. It's just so many targets. Running backs are getting targets out of the backfield. Tyler Johnson's out there. There's so many targets out there. Their defense is really good. If you could get a Travis Fulgham for Chris Godwin, I would go do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough trade for me. Probably a tough trade for. That trade would get accepted, I feel like, more than likely.
Yeah, and I think, if you drafted Chris Godwin in the second or third round and you've held on to him, he's been injured a lot and he's had a couple of nice games, but your team potentially could be hurting. And if you're in a win now situation, I don't know how much Godwin's going to help you win now.
True.
So next player we're going to, and again, make sure you get some good value for it. Obviously, it's not just like a fire sale on Chris Godwin, but I think there are some players where, like a Travis Fulgham, where I'm higher on them rest of the season than a Chris Godwin.
What about Justin Jefferson?
Maybe. I don't know about that. That's tough. That's going to be really close. I think if somebody's giving you Justin Jefferson for Chris Godwin, you might even be able to get another player, like a 2-for-1.
Alrighty.
I'd maybe see if I could get a Terry McLaurin, maybe.
I'm not giving up Terry McLaurin for Godwin.
Yeah, but you're higher on Terry McLaurin than a lot of other people are. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I think.
Okay. Yeah, I get you.
And again, Chris Godwin's just a big name. And again, I know there are a lot of fantasy owners who are just attracted to big names. So.
I get it.
Next up, talk about Todd Gurley. And this is tough because Todd Gurley is, pretty consistent, getting you double digits, has super high touchdown upside, which keeps him at a safe floor. Hasn't been too efficient. And he did just get through the easiest stretch matchup-wise. So currently RB6 on the season and half-point PPR, averaging about 14.5 points a game. So you've been really happy if you've had him so far. He's produced pretty well, but I think he has some tough matchups. He plays Tampa Bay twice the rest of the season. Plays New Orleans twice. And it's just one of those things where Todd Gurley, I think, has a lot of value right now. And I think his value might decline a little bit.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I think he's outperforming what he does for the rest of the season. I think he does not average over 14 points throughout the remainder of the season. I think it's more closer to... At the end of the season, I think we see that number closer to 11 or 12.
Yeah, I can agree with you. And again, he will still have value going forward. They give him so many red zone touches. It doesn't look like that will change as long as he's healthy.
Agreed.
But again, I think rest of season you could maybe pair Todd Gurley with a nice player and get a really good player. You could, yeah, it's Yeah, he plays New Orleans and Tampa Bay twice, and and that's tough. And he still has the bye week 10, so potentially rest of the season there could be 5 weeks where you're looking at really tough matchups and a bye, and you know,
So would you rather have Todd Gurley or Ezekiel Elliott?
uh, see, I don't know. I don't think that trade is. Oh man, I mean, that's tough. I might Zeke.
Higher upside.
Yeah, higher upside, but it's tough because again, I think they're both going to be finding
Not good.
themselves like middle RB2s.
Could be.
And
Yeah.
they both have potential to get to. Well, they'll both still have a couple games where they score two touchdowns.
Yep.
So I don't know.
So who are you trading Gurley for? Who would be running back you would rather have?
All right, let's see. I'll put.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire
Yeah,
or Todd Gurley.
I think I'd rather have CEH.
All right.
I think. Yeah.
Even with Bell.
Yeah, I think so. I think the last couple games have been kind of outliers.
About Justin Jackson.
I'd rather have Todd Gurley. Chris Carson. Who would you rather have rest of the season?
Chris Carson if he's healthy. But that's if he's healthy,
Yeah,
he's had injury problems. Todd Gurley's been on the field. Look like they're giving him the red zone work.
I mean, they're giving him the ball. He's seeing the touches. He hasn't been efficient, but he has been finding his way in the end zone most weeks. So Todd
He has
Gurley
good value.
Yeah, has good value.
He's performed. Trade him away before the bye week.
Absolutely. Next up, we got Melvin Gordon. And I think hold Melvin Gordon this week. Let them play Atlanta, and then I'm selling Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, I think he might have a better week against Atlanta, which would raise his value. But again, I really like Philip Lindsay, and I think he ends up being just as good as play as Melvin Gordon. So Melvin Gordon's value is going to go down.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, if you have Melvin Gordon and maybe, you had a Kenny Galladay or something, maybe you need a receiver, and I think you get some really good value for Melvin Gordon right now. Last week, obviously they just got down, so they had to abandon the run early, and he has some nice matchups going forward. But again, it looks like to be just an even split backfield, and I don't like to be a part of that. I'm selling. I'm definitely just trying to get rid of Melvin Gordon if he's on my team.
Melvin Gordon or Todd Gurley?
Todd Gurley. I mean, you just know he's going to get the red zone touches, and for me, that's such a safe. That keeps him at a really safe floor, and I don't know if we're going to be able to say the same about Melvin Gordon going forward, or it might be just inconsistent. He'll get, it'll just be split.
I haven't seen the Broncos in the red zone for a long time, so
yeah. But yeah, some favorable matchups going forward. So there it is, folks. Talked about some injuries, waivers, streamers, buy and sell targets. Thursday, we're going to have a ranking show coming for you. We'll have our top 40 running back receiver rankings as well as quarterback and everything else. So we will be going live for that, so make sure you hit the bell to get notified. Thursday, we have the Green Bay at San Francisco game. Obviously, San Francisco is going to be without a lot of their top weapons, Jimmy Garoppolo, George Kittle. Last week, Jeff Wilson went out. Tevin Coleman went out again. Deebo Samuel's out. So keep an eye on some injuries into the week. We'll have some notifications of that on Thursday. But as always, give us a follow. We really appreciate all the comments and questions that you give us. We love helping you guys out. Love giving opinions and our thoughts on trades and lineups and all that. So
Yeah, absolutely. What he said, hit that bell and get notified when we go live. We're probably going to go live with the ranking show to Wednesday or Thursday.
Maybe Wednesday.
What do you want to do? Wednesday.
Let's do it on Wednesday.
So, yeah, hit the notification and you'll get notified when we go live Wednesday.
Absolutely. And peace.